So now the 10:30 update on Hurricane Delta. What has changed since yesterday? There's been a slight shift west in the track. Southwest Louisiana landfall looks likely, but some of those higher winds may edge into Texas, even hurricane force winds potentially on the far eastern parts of the coastline there.
Hey Dan,
Yes.
you need to share your screen. You need to share your screen, I think.
Gotcha. All right.
There you go. Thanks.
Thanks, Lance. Thank you. So the hurricane warnings, because of that slight shift, have been shifted west to High Island, Texas. Other changes, the tropical storm and coastal flood watches we had yesterday have generally been upgraded to warnings. In some areas, those watches became coastal flood advisories. Here's a look at the latest track. Again, not a huge change from what we saw yesterday, just ever so slight shift to the west. And the red line you could see is the hurricane warning on this map, and you can see it does extend a little farther west than the watch did yesterday. So it's right up now against our warning area. So that has implications for our eastern counties like the Bolivar Peninsula and Chambers County. The expectation perhaps of some higher winds, maybe high-end tropical storm force, but we'll talk more about that in a moment. The track right now, northwest at 14, so it's moving quite quickly. It is forecast to gradually bend to more northerly and then north-northeast by the time it makes landfall Friday evening, tomorrow evening. Again, most likely on the southwest Louisiana coast. The greatest impact for our area, we think, will be the high surf, beach erosion, and coastal flooding, especially along the Gulf-facing beaches. And we are expecting tropical storm force winds in that tropical storm warning area you see in blue. There is a chance, if the storm were to shift a little bit more to the left, that tropical storm warning area could be extended a little further down the coast. Right now it extends down to San Luis Pass. This is just a quick look at some of the warnings we have going on. The dark red area there is tropical storm warning. One change to this map, the hurricane warning that's in the lighter shade of red actually extends now right down to High Island, areas just east of High Island. So it's right up against now Bolivar and Chambers counties. And again, that reflects the expectation of maybe some higher winds, even getting into Texas and maybe into our eastern zones. Coastal flood warning and coastal flood advisories are in effect as you go down the coast, especially Gulf-facing beaches. We expect a rise in the mean water level and waves and surf on top of that. So we do expect some perhaps significant coastal flooding when you combine in the effects of the waves. There is also a coastal flood warning around Galveston Bay for some high water there. Here's a look at the satellite loop over the past hour or so, and it does appear to me that there is an eye developing in Hurricane Delta. There's some discussion in the weather office, whether it is a true eye, but it certainly has that appearance. So it's possible Delta is starting to strengthen a bit as we see that eye develop near the center there. The wind timing really hasn't changed much. Arrival of tropical storm force winds to our coastline and the Louisiana coast, most likely Friday morning. You can see that Friday 8 a.m. time arc there. So that's not really changed over the last few days. The shaded values, you can see some higher probabilities now into Texas, some of those purples into the far upper Texas coast, especially east of Galveston Bay. But even for Galveston Bay, Galveston Island, and certainly Bolivar and Chambers, we're looking at very high likelihoods now of seeing some sustained tropical storm force winds of 40 miles per hour or higher. And you can see those probabilities gradually decrease as you get farther away from the track. So the greatest chance of the strongest winds, again, looks to be for our eastern counties. The 58 mile per hour sustained wind probabilities, again, a slight shift west from yesterday in this pattern, still the highest probabilities over southwest Louisiana, but fairly significant probabilities, greater than 30%, all the way down to Galveston Bay, Bolivar, and Chambers counties. So perhaps some higher end winds for our eastern counties. As you get farther to the west, those values go down. So for example, for Harris County, looking at more like 5 to 10% chance of higher end tropical storm force winds. Here's a look at the hurricane force winds, more of the same, just a slight shift to the west, which of course brings those closer to our area. So hurricane force winds, greatest chance again, southwest Louisiana. Unfortunately, that area that was hit so hard with Laura looks to be hit again, but certainly could see some higher end winds even into Texas now, some hurricane force winds, and that's why that hurricane warning has been extended down to High Island, so right on the edge of our forecast area. This graphic is meant to show just a general sense of timing. This is created in HurrAvac. Don't focus too much on the details here, on the exact boundaries of tropical storm force and hurricane force winds, but it gives you a sense of the timing. And what we've got here is a plot on the left, 6 a.m. Friday. And the blue is meant to show the area of tropical storm force winds, the yellow 58 mile per hour, and the red's hurricane force. And then the image on the right is 3 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. So what I want you to take away from this is a general sense of timing, in that some of those highest winds will likely be brushing our area tomorrow afternoon based on the latest forecast. Now, it may be shifted a little bit differently than this. You might even get hurricane force winds expanding into Texas. But my point here is that we're really only 30 hours or so from perhaps some of those stronger winds coming into our area. The rainfall forecast hasn't changed much. It has shifted a tad to the west, as the track has, so that does bring potentially some heavier rain into our far eastern zones. Again, Bolivar, Chambers, Eastern Polk, Eastern Liberty. And so those eastern zones may be on the edge of some heavier rain. Still, flooding is not the biggest concern, but for those counties, we could see some heavy enough rain to cause at least some localized flooding. So that is a little bit of a change from yesterday. And this excessive rainfall outlook is meant to highlight those areas that could see flash flooding, that are at most at risk. The moderate risk red area there is in southwest Louisiana, again, including Lake Charles and Alexandria. So just, very bad news, again, for some of the areas hit hard by Laura. The slight risk extends all the way to Chambers County now, Eastern Liberty, Eastern Polk. So that is a change. Perhaps our eastern zones will catch some heavier rains on the western side of the track. And then as you get into Galveston and Eastern Harris, there is a marginal, meaning a slight risk of rather a marginal risk of flash flooding, meaning some isolated as possible. So just a little slight change from yesterday. Looking at the tides, this really hasn't changed much. This Eagle Point chart is meant to represent sort of the western part of Galveston Bay. We're looking at tide levels getting up 3.5 to 4 feet above mean lower low water, and that typically corresponds to minor coastal flooding. It could be a bit higher than this, But just keep that in mind. And if it looks like the highest of the high tides looks to be Friday morning, perhaps into Friday evening. So those impacts are right almost upon us now. You can see some of the impacts there on the lower part of the slide, some of the things that we see happen at 4 feet, Toddville Road in Seabrook, Red Bluff Road, and Texas 146. The bay entrance and all the Gulf facing beaches, the important thing here to remember is the wave action is in addition to what we see here. So we're looking at high tides really tonight and tomorrow up above 4 feet above mean lower low water, perhaps even 4.5. And the effect of the waves coming in off the Gulf basically adds about a foot to this. So we call that wave run up. So even though these values, we've seen higher mean values with some of our storms even this year. Think about the Laura case, for example, where we had a tremendous amount of wave action in addition to the high water. So bottom line, for our Gulf-facing areas, for Bolivar, Galveston Island, even coastal Brazoria, we do expect some flooding and some high surf and even some beach erosion occurring tonight and tomorrow. Same story for Freeport here. Really not much to add. The timing again, mostly tonight and tomorrow, as far as the high water levels and the high surf on top of it. Matagorda Bay entrance, perhaps not quite as high there, but think about areas like Sargent where there's not a lot of dune protection at this point. Would certainly expect some coastal flooding again down that way. Matagorda Beach, there's a little bit more of a dune structure there. So bottom line is we've had a few storms already this year, and we're looking at another one with some high surf and high tides. This map here is from a wave model, and it shows what we showed yesterday. We're looking at over 30-foot seas, potentially 30-foot waves offshore this morning offshore, and that wave energy propagates into the coast. We're already seeing some of that now, and as we go through the day and through tonight, we'll see more of that really heavy surf on the beaches, high seas offshore, a real marine concern this is, and of course the high winds as well. So very significant marine hazards as we go through the day today, the night tonight, and right through landfall tomorrow. These will be a big concern. So just to sum up, we've talked about this now for a few days, but the high surf and swells already starting to reach the Texas coast today. Situation will only get worse tonight and tomorrow as the storm makes its closest approach. We do expect that coastal flooding and the wave action on the Gulf side to be a significant concern tonight and Friday. We had a similar situation with Laura, so that gives us some idea of what we're looking at. But every storm is a bit different. This may actually be a bit larger, as it turns out, than Laura. So bottom line, it could be fairly hazardous tonight and Friday on the Gulf Coast. Tropical storm force winds are likely, it should say, in the warning area starting late tonight and Friday, and the possibility of greater than 50-mile-per-hour winds, especially eastern sections, talking about Bolivar, Chambers, Galveston counties, perhaps up into Liberty County. There is a slight risk of flash flooding the far eastern zones, otherwise no real flood concern. That is a change from yesterday. Maybe some of that heavier rain does get into our eastern zones, and not really thinking of a tornado that there's a tornado concern at this point. Still, there is some uncertainty in the track being 36 hours out. We could get some shift, and certainly the intensity could change. As I said, there may be hints on satellite that it is intensifying right now, although that remains to be seen. So there's still some uncertainty, but confidence is increasing. I think we have a general sense of what we're dealing with as far as surge, high surf, and high winds affecting our coastlines, especially eastern zones.